morning. It's good to have you guys here with me. I hope you're having positive experiences with your kiddos. I guarantee you're going to have negative ones too. That's just life. It's silly to have expectations that everything's going to be rosy just because you chose this wonderful thing of having your kiddos at home. But it is a wonderful experience, a very rewarding experience for both you and for them. I have been spending my time lately watching, or not watching, but well, sort of, some of them are watching, but watching videos, listening to the audios on Well-Educated Heart. And I honestly cannot recommend that highly enough for you moms. Oh, thanks, Jen. I got an answer from Jen about why she's dark. But Well-Educated Heart, I'm going to put that here in the comments. For those of you who haven't been there yet, I didn't capitalize, oh well. There is a website, there is an app, there is a Facebook group. There are lots of ways to be connected to Well-Educated Heart, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful resource. I have just made a little Marco Polo group for my family, for a sister-in-law and some nieces, and my sister and nieces and my daughter-in-law, all these who are young wives and soon to be young mothers, to discuss the things that we're learning there on Well-Educated Heart, because it's such a great, there's such great information there just for parenting, for, and above and beyond that, just for warming your own heart, filling your heart with good, beautiful things, so that you can then share that, and that'll trickle down with to your family. And I just love it. There's so many things I'm rehearing, and so anyway, so I'm loving that experience. Have any of you had any experience with the Well-Educated Heart with Marlene Peterson and those podcasts, those little messages, the videos that she'll put up YouTube videos and really interesting things for helping us learn how to teach to the heart. Anybody here have any experience there? No, I know Lindsay has, but I know she's working out right now. Oh, there you are.
I'm out of breath, but we've been using it for like, I can't even remember now because it's been a while since I very first heard about it. I went to see Marlene in Utah like 3 or 4 years ago and met with her and a group of like 12 women, and it was the coolest thing. And I've, been doing it ever since. So I listened to the podcast this morning from yesterday. So her podcasts are a wonderful resource. Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
I love it. And that's really motivated you in the way that you approach teaching your children, hasn't it?
Yes.
It's made a huge difference. I think she's amazing, and she is definitely inspired. The work that she's doing, she is doing for moms, for children, for the world, really. She doesn't do it for pay. It's not a job for her, but she works full time doing it, providing all of these amazing books and resources for us. Lindsay, we're going to say something else? Oh, no, you're muted now. I'm sorry. Try to let Lindsay work out while she's listening. But there are incredible resources in art and music and nature, crafts, and stories, a wealth of stories. She's gone back to I'm trying to remember what she calls it, the golden age of children's literature, I think. And those are the stories that she collects and then she actually prints them, and she has them in book format, so you can order them to have at home to use as a resource, but you can access almost all of it for free on her website. So if it's not something you want to purchase, or you're just, your budget's tight, or you're not sure what you're doing, but you want to check it out, go and check it out. You don't have to use her rotation for your school if you've got something else going. I see Jen mentioned that. But accessing the Mother's University, the part where it's training you, oh, I just couldn't recommend that highly enough. And it's one of those things where I remember years ago, Lindsay told me about it and was really excited about it and felt she was very passionate about it. One of my sister-in-laws, Kristen, she told me about it years and years ago. She ran across it with her first two that are the same age as my oldest. And she was following Marlene. And I'm sure that she told me about it very passionately. And it was one of those things that I meant to do. I meant to get around to looking into it. And I really sincerely did. I was busy and I just didn't. Now that I am investing time in it, oh, how I wish that I had looked into it more back then so that I would have had that foundation. I had to get mine a little bit at a time, but that, I mean, that works too, but just letting you know again that that is an amazing resource out there for you. Okay, I'm going to take a minute just to see. Oh, right. Not just for homeschoolers. Yeah, any moms can use that. Thank you, Jen. Any moms can use that resource. Any women can use that resource. If you are past the childbearing years like me, and you're just waiting for grandchildren, then you can do it. There is so much that I am learning about how we learn and about how things really get into our hearts. And that's where true learning takes place. She has a wealth of information because she has studied this for so long and has really made this her life's mission. But she talks about how real true learning is the stuff that affects the heart, and that's how you make a place for information. So using art and music and nature and stories to teach ourselves and to teach children is the real way to get a true education. And then later on, because we've already created this love for the subject, then later on when we bring in facts, those facts have something to connect to. And I think that makes so much sense. You know, when you think about the way that we've been doing it for a while, which is the way I grew up doing it, which was drilling and memorizing and preparing for tests and then forgetting. She mentions that they've done studies that show that we forget about 90% of what we learned in high school. I'd agree with that. I know, with the exception of the things that you just connected to because you had a love for it and you couldn't get enough of it. So if we're going to spend this time with our children, wouldn't you like to spend it investing your time on something that's actually going to stick, something that's going to have and make a difference with them, and for them. Anyway, I wanted to share an experience before I forget. My daughter, who spoke to us twice, and we messed up the recordings twice. I'm still so sad about that. She has a part-time job working with a family. She is helping their two youngest children with their distance learning. The parents both are gone during the day, they're at work. And so Sarah is there to help this kindergartner and first grader with their distance learning. She has a degree in child development, and she's just a really fun and interesting person. She's kind of a child magnet. Wherever she goes, it'll just take a few minutes and she's surrounded by children. No exaggeration. But she was with them, and she's just had 1 week out there, 3 days. She's 3 days a week for a few hours. And she brought to them this book. And it doesn't really matter which one of his books, but you know, this is Shel Silverstein and his books of poetry. And for one section of the day, she read a poem to them. I think she might have read 2 poems to them. And they did different activities, music and art and nature things, and physical activities, and then came back for their quiet time after lunch and read from Mary Poppins. She thought it was just so much fun that these kiddos, the second day that she was there, the little girl remembered many of the lines from the first poem that she shared, the one that they just giggled so much about. And then the third day, they were able to recite most of that poem. This is starting with poetry as a way to teach your children, a way to bring them something rich and wonderful and even funny and silly, but something that can stick and get into their hearts. Marlene shared a story about she and her husband visiting this elderly couple that they knew in a care facility. And she talked about the fact that this older gentleman had been caring for his wife who has Alzheimer's for years. And it had been years since she even remembered who he was, but he And he would often recite poetry. That was something that he had done since he was a youth. He had memorized poems, and those had been a way of enriching his life. And Marlene said that, he would look tired. He was often very tired, and he would even comment to them, I'm just so tired. But if they would ask him to recite a poem, she said it was so interesting because he would all of a sudden he would straighten up, and he would kind of brighten up, and his voice would get louder and stronger, and he would recite a poem that he knew. And she said on one of their last visit to visit him, they went in and he just said, "Oh, I'm just especially tired." And she immediately said, "Well, would you recite us a poem?" And so he went off and started reciting Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod. And most of us know that poem or are familiar with maybe a verse or two, but he went on to recite the whole entire thing. And after he finished, Marlene said, "Oh, that was one," something like, "Oh, that was wonderful. Is that one that you memorized as a youth?" And he said, "No, that's just the latest one I've been working on." And so this was something he was continuing to do to the end of his life. And it was something that was bringing him joy and creating a warmth and a positive and kind of keeping his heart alive. And it was just a few days after that he passed on. And then his wife shortly after. But I thought, what a wonderful thing for him to know that this poetry, and maybe not, on an intellectual level, but that fed his heart, and that was something that he continued to do. So that's important, to bring that gift to your children. So I'm just going to share with you this poem that Sarah shared with these children and that they latched onto and have already mostly memorized. I think she said the little girl has memorized it. It's called Something Missing. And it says, "I remember I put on my socks. I remember I put on my shoes. I remember I put on my tie that was painted in beautiful purple and blues. I remember I put on my coat to look perfectly grand at the dance. Yet I feel there is something I may have forgot. What is it? What is it?" And it shows this picture. Hold on. Oh, he's forgotten, obviously, his pants. And the children just love that. They just think that's so silly, and they giggle and they laugh. But with the repetition and just the silliness of it, it's something that they loved and they wanted to memorize. And so they, like I said, they have. And I think that's wonderful. That's one thing you can do when you're a little overwhelmed and you're not sure where you want to go or what you want to do, but you want to get some kind of something that matters, something that's part of that heart learning into them. You can start with poetry. We did that with our children, and we had just a handful of poems that we worked with, but oh my goodness, to this day, those are things that they remember. And I was trying to find a way to make it fun and have them want to engage. I see that a lot in the comments with moms, I'm trying to do this, but they just don't want to participate. So I had to think of some ways to make it a little more fun. So, and usually silly makes things fun for children. So we approached it as, hey, I know you could come up with a different accent, a Southern accent or an English accent or Australian or whatever. And you could say it, you could recite it using that accent. And I also would have them stand up, and they couldn't lean on anything or shift back and forth, just for that little bit of habit training, a little bit of discipline. You can put that in there in ways that are part of their lives, but not part of the education learning part, so that learning stays fun. But they would have to stand up straight and put their arms at their side and recite this poem. Now, if they got really into it and they were using their hands and being expressive, I obviously was not going to stop them with that. But anyway, and so they would use these accents and do these poems. And so now they still goof around and they'll do their little childhood accents and recite their poems. And I love that. I think that's wonderful. I'm going to stop for a minute, see if anybody has any comments about poetry or those kinds of experiences with your children. Kathy.
I have to tell you that, can you hear me okay? My AirPods are totally loud.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so when Audrey, my oldest, was in American Heritage, a private school in American Fork, Utah, they had beautiful and really fun poems they learned consistently through the school year. She was there for 2.5 years until the vice principal asked me to homeschool, because she homeschooled all her kids. And she said that Audrey would be a great candidate, and I didn't know what I was doing at that time, but I remember Audrey learning those poems, and she still knows some of them. And so at that young age, they were impressed upon her, and they stuck with her. And I have since, I think I have them somewhere in my storage, the poems I gathered from that school, because they were so good. And I wanted to incorporate those. I did a little bit in the beginning, but I haven't kept up with it. So this is a good reminder for me to pull out the poetry again. So that's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I love that. You know, you listen in conference and you hear general authorities quoting poems, especially President Monson, but poems that they had memorized when they were young, and you can tell those were important to them.
Yeah.
So I love that. And, you know, homeschoolers are great resources for anything like that. You start searching on the internet and you put homeschool in your search for poetry or great stories or biographies or art or science or anything, and you're going to come up with a richer list, because these parents have invested and they have their hearts involved, and they want to come up with good material, and so they do that, and I love that. I don't know, have any of you found that to be true also? Those resources seem to be just wonderful. Okay, any other mamas want to make any comments about poetry?
I'll jump in here real quick. I'm getting cleaned up, so you'll see my face in a minute. We have done for a long time, we've always had poetry as part of our school, and it's just been how we open the day. So we do song, prayer, poem, pledge, and that's just how we start every day. And my kids, you think, oh gosh, they like roll their eyes, and they, you feel like you're torturing them having to do poetry sometimes. But then I'll get gifts, like I'll get a poem as a gift for my birthday from one of my kids. And I think they know it's important to me at the very least. So even if it's not something that they love yet, they know that I love it. So I just figure that's got to be worth something.
So can you share what you got for your birthday from Sarah?
She found a poem, because we have a whole shelf of poetry books, because I have a problem. And she found a poem called When Mother Reads Aloud. So she pulled from a couple things that she knows I value. I love reading aloud to my kids, and I love poetry, and I think she knew I would love that. So she copied it down for me, and she also hates writing. So it meant even more to me, because she hates to copy things. So yeah.
I thought that was just beautiful. What a meaningful gift for you, for her to do that, and for her to have looked through and found one that she felt would be perfect for mom. And that's something that she knows, that mom loves that, and mom shares that and reads to the family. I loved that, Lindsay.
Yeah, so that made my heart happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And mamas can sure go for days and weeks off of one positive experience. We have all those negative ones, but even just one tiny little thing, we pick up the crumbs, that we are given. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to go on with some of the books that I pulled. I kind of pulled the ones for older kids today, because I've had people asking me, but what about? And these go for all ages, but you can also, get to the heart of the older ones. So I pulled this, and this is not to say, oh, you should have this book. I'm not at all. You are going to know what you need for your family. You're going to run across little treasures, and they'll be just the perfect thing for you. But back in the day, I signed up with DK, and I told the lady, I'm not going to sell them. I don't want to sell them. I just want the bundle of books. And she said, that's okay. And I said, are you sure that's okay? Because I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get the intro books, and I'm going to do nothing ever again with it. And she said that was fine. So I did. It was just a great way to get in and to get a bunch of their books. And so here's this science encyclopedia. Well, this book, it's funny because my kids were little. Stevie and Sarah my oldest were probably, let me think, like 6 and 5 or 7 and 5, something like that, when we first got this book, this collection. And so this book, this science encyclopedia, which has a 2-page spread on any topic. And it just has, you know how DK books are, lots of color pictures and then some writing to tell about it. Well, this book was something that was on the breakfast table every morning for however many 2-page spreads there are in the book. So I don't know. Let me look. I'm not gonna do the math, but you can do the math, but oh, well, that's just, I guess I could. It's just dividing by 2. So there are 400 pages in this book. So for 200 days, Monday through Friday days, this book was on my kitchen table because my husband was reading it. My husband is a science geek. He absolutely loves science, It's fascinating to him. If he can talk to somebody that has any kind of a job in science, in anything, or has experience with it, or loves it, he'll talk for hours. But he's trying to pull from them, you know, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? You know, anything they have experience in, he's just going to talk and talk and find out what they know. And then he'll remember every little bit of it. But so he goes through and he's, and he's going through and reading, let's say he's reading about sound and light, making and hearing sounds. And he's just reading this little 2-page spread just because he can read it while he's having breakfast. And he had breakfast at a different time than everybody else because of the schedule. But people would, the family would come in and out and be around, you know, and sometimes we'd be all together and sometimes it'd just be a combination of people. But anyway, Dad was sitting and reading. And what do you know? You know, the kids, science became this thing that, oh yeah, Dad loves science. Even just that's enough to have your kids be a little bit more engaged in science, just a little bit. Kathy, you're going to say something? Or we have a delay maybe. Oh, Lindsay. Welcome, Lindsay. You did your little short workout? I need to do that. I need to start doing that. But they knew Dad loves science. And then they started picking up the book and being a little bit interested in some of the things. Or they'd ask him about what it was that he, you know, if he was learning something interesting. And he started talking to him about it. I thought that was great. That's a fabulous, fabulous way to introduce things to your children, is by you reading, you engaging with that thing. They see you doing it, and it becomes, for one, just part of the family, I don't know what to call that, the family experience. You know, our family does this. Dad loves science. I know that, for one, I know both Kathy and Lindsay, since I know them both well, have dads who are super engaged in whatever their hobbies or their passions are, and they share that with their children. That's something that trickles down from dad to children, and that is amazing. That's a wonderful gift. Anyone want to comment on that?
You froze for just a minute, so I hope I'm answering the question right. Talking about dads being involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, David, you know how I was at the beginning. I think most dads at the beginning are very just afraid of homeschooling. Like, that's not, their kids are going to be weird or whatever. That was a big fear. And I think subconsciously he's become this like awesome homeschool dad because he loves learning, and he like has, yeah, like you said, he has hobbies and he fixes things, and the kids just get pulled into it. It's like they just are watching. And so he reads all the time, and he's so much better at this than I am, and he's not even trying. So I think he just reads a book and then he talks to the kids about it, and all those things. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Max keeps trying to get in here.
I know. Hi, Max.
Hey, Sister Fabulous.
Hi, sweetie.
All right. But yeah, I think dads are so natural at it, and they're because I'm reading like how to do it right, and they're just doing it.
Right. They're just doing it. And I think Lindsay's got a little low bandwidth message came up. How about, am I on for everybody else? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. I love that. And I love that that's how it feels at your house. And it's funny because I remember I got the information from your husband about all of those YouTube science channels for Michael when he was younger. And that was amazing. That was awesome. I know Kate last week, that Kathy's husband's cousin, we were chatting about her son, and I was saying, gosh, you just get them into these things that are their passion and let them go, and you'll be amazed at what comes out of that. Just their following their interests is such a great way to homeschool. And if their dad has an interest and they have a desire to follow that and to go along with that, then fabulous. Oh, thanks, Jen. Okay. Any other comments about science? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about science, but or dads being involved. I think I will say, I'll just echo Lindsay's. So often when you start, the husbands just, maybe you got the pricking of your heart saying, okay, you need to bring your kids home. Or in a lot of cases today, it's just been a forced thing on parents because they don't want their kids in that distance learning or environment, lots of screen time or whatever. But often it does take the dads a little bit of time to come around. But just for you moms, if you're in that situation right now, just stay positive. Don't get defensive. Lovingly share with them what you're doing. Remind them that this is something that you feel strongly about. This is something that you feel like your children need. They'll come around, and then they'll be your biggest supporters. I love hearing my husband talk about what we're doing and what we've done with our children, and it's fun. It's really fun once they cross that threshold and are on the other side and are your supporters. Anybody, any comments? Oh, okay. Laura, welcome. Okay. Laura, did you have a comment you wanted to share? I think Laura may be just joining us. Okay, so, and I wanted to share this. I thought this was really interesting. We found a collection of books at Costco. Costco is now one of your places to go for buying books, but, and I think it was, I don't know, 4 volumes, something. Anyway, but there was the elements and physics and mathematics and philosophy and I don't know what else. But anyway, they're beautiful books. They were interesting, and for example, the title says Ponderables, 100 Breakthroughs That Changed History, Who Did What When, Physics, an Illustrated History of the Foundations of Science. So, and it even has this big fold out timeline of when these things were discovered. And it's kind of like the DK book where it just has a little spread. It's got some pictures and a little blurb about whatever the subject is. But we just put those in our library. I think we gave them as Christmas gifts to the family library. We gift things often to the family library. But one of my kids, the one that's super into science, just kept pulling these books off the shelves and would go, and he read all these books just from, and maybe not cover to cover, but all the pages that he was interested in. And now you can really have an interesting discussion with Michael about science. He talks with one of the members of our ward often. In fact, he Michael is now giving piano lessons to that former bishop. But when the bishop is here for his piano lessons, he and Michael talk science because that bishop was a high school science teacher. He's retired now. But they will get into these, really interesting discussions about science. And the bishop will talk to me later and just say, he really knows a lot. He has this, passion for it. So they will pick those books up. If you have them around, they really will do that. Okay, moving from science. And again, this is just have some books, have some interesting things around that they can pick up if they choose to. Math. These are 2 books that I bring up often. And so many of my books I got used. These are Mathematicians Are People Too, volumes 1 and 2. Short little stories, very much like this one, if any of you have this one, Archimedes and the Door of Science. That's the one that the story came from, the first one of my Zoom meetings where we were just talking about, something's buzzing on Michael's desk, sorry, I didn't know what that was. where we were just talking about narration. And I was using the story of Archimedes and the King's Crown that came out of this book. So mathematicians are people too. Books about mathematicians and how it was that they came upon whatever principle of mathematics that they discovered. That was using these books and telling these stories just as stories. I didn't talk about this is going to be a great foundation for you for math, or this is why you're doing math. I would just read the stories just for fun. And they were engaged, they were interested, it was something kind of cool. And then when we would do math, and if something came up that was a principle and they had that story, they usually remembered. And they said, oh, I remember when I was little and we talked about so-and-so. And I don't remember because my brain isn't the sponge that theirs is, but they remembered. And what made that connection. Those connections are important. So you teach to the heart, you get something into their heart. And then later when you give them information, facts, figures, things like that, they've got something to attach it to, something real to attach it to. So that is my science and math. And because this sort of fits in that category, I wanted to mention this. Anyone familiar with this? Yeah, Kathy, I figured you guys knew this. So this is Dave Ramsey. This is Foundations in Personal Finance, high school edition for homeschool. I highly recommend this to most parents. It's a fabulous book. My oldest went through it because he wanted to. He already knew Dave Ramsey, had read Dave Ramsey's book. He just wanted to look through it. But my youngest did it as part of his high school. And that kid took advantage of this latest lovely thing that's been happening in our country. And when the stock market fell, Michael took his mission money and wisely, prayerfully, bought a bunch of stocks. And he's up, I think I don't know what his biggest jump was, but he's up like $1,600. I mean, this is a very short amount of time to make that much money. But he's added to his mission fund because he knew some about investing and using your dollars and, and things. And so he took that book, took the knowledge he gained from it and made that useful in his life. So, but anyway, great principles of budgeting and finance and things like that. So I highly recommend that. And it's not very expensive. It comes with a video too. I don't know, a DVD, sorry. And so that was a good thing too. So let me see. Then moving on to how do you teach history? Oh yeah, hi Kate, welcome. Yeah, highly recommend it. I mean, for the co-op, that's great because they'll probably have activities where these kids are actually doing the exercises. And Michael did that. Michael, I didn't tell him he had to do the little activities in the workbook, because I don't generally do that. I'm kind of one of those who's read the book, tell me about it. I'm not going to have them write about it because that just kind of kills the enthusiasm. It's funny. Not funny, but it's really interesting how hard it is to let go of those ideas from public school. Those are that's the experience that we've had. And it's so hard to think that children can learn and it can be fun. And I think I know that's the case because it was with me, and I've experienced it with a bunch of homeschool moms that I've talked with and shared with. And I see it in all the questions that are being asked by homeschool moms. It's interesting, but it is a kind of a tale as old as time kind of a thing. I was reading about Frederick, Froebel, I don't know how you say his name, but him and I think it's Johann Pestalozzi. These are pioneers in education. And these guys, they're the ones that together came up with, Friedrich, really, it was his idea, but he was under the influence of Pestalozzi, but came up with kindergarten, children's garden, a children's garden, that was the ideal way for children to learn. And so back in, he was in Switzerland, I think. Frederick came from Germany, joined Pestalozzi in Switzerland, and they were having these educational discussions and trying to change education and bring it to the children, and came up with a children's garden. And it was actually a garden. They would have, each child would have a garden that they would tend and care for in all the non-winter months, you know, which is probably just a very short time when you're talking Switzerland, but they would have these 4 or 5 months that they would have a garden, each child, that they took care of. And the lessons that they learned from those experiences were priceless. And they were, these men who had studied education and had this passion for it were seeing the fruits of their labors, and the things that they had believed were actually indeed true. And they could see it. It was manifest in what these children were doing. And this idea spread like wildfire. People just loved it. And these little kindergartens were popping up in lots of different places and even across the world. But what happens is one day Friedrich wakes up and he looks in the newspaper, the little local paper, and sees that the government has decided to stop all kindergarten. They are not comfortable with it. It is not a good thing because too many new ideas are coming up, and these children are having new ideas, and there are new ideas about education, and that is not good. And so they were shutting them down. So sad for those local areas, but that idea had already gone, you know, and the wind had carried it away. And other people were latching onto this idea. And this is something I didn't know, but Branson Alcott, who is Louisa May Alcott's father, he's one who heard about it. And he is one who started his own school in his area and made it a rich learning experience for children there. And wouldn't you know it, you know, one of his daughters would grow up and write these heartwarming, wonderful stories about families and their experiences together. You know, that's Little Women and Little Men and Joe's Boys and all of those beautiful books that we love. That was her father. But this idea grew, but the people had to fight it everywhere that they encountered it, because people didn't like this idea that education, the kids are having fun. They can't be learning because they're having too much fun. And so they wanted to stop it. Well, if you can have the courage, and it does take courage, to sit back and let your kids just have fun. Go out and explore without an agenda, without workbooks, without requirements of papers to be written. You will be amazed at how much they'll learn. Now, in the beginning, if they haven't done this, they're not going to know what to do. I remember, I mean, even though I homeschooled from the beginning, I didn't start with this philosophy. You know, I had the desks and the workbooks and everything in the beginning. I slowly got rid of all of that. But when I came to the idea of children need to be outside every day for at least 2 hours every day, weather permitting, and you know, there's that phrase that there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing, inadequate clothing, I don't know, something like that. So that means they could pretty much go out anytime and be outside, but 2 hours a day. When I started that, I had to lock the door to keep them outside because they didn't know what to do. And you know of even schools for children, pre-K and kindergarten, they've got activities here. Go outside and do this. Take these tools, these materials and things, and go out and do these activities. Then there are other wonderful, more enriching school environments where they do let the kids go out and just play and explore, and they understand the value of that learning. But I had to learn that, and so did my children. And so I would lock the door and just say, no, because you need to play without me. You need to find something really fun and interesting to do outside without me. They'd say, what? We don't know what to do. And I'd say, I don't know. Just go play. Go play. I'll be here. I'll have a snack for you when it's time to come in. I'll come get you when it's time to come in. And it took several days for them to first realize Mom's serious. She's really not opening the door. We really have to stay out here. And then for them to come up with some ideas. But after that, they didn't want to come back in. They loved being out there, and they came up with so many wonderful things to do outside. Here's another reason why this is important. Well, why it's important for them to have play, and for them to have play that's not directed by an adult. There's a story, it's just a tiny little blurb actually in a book that I love. That talks about the importance of books and how a book can just take you away to another place. It's an escape, it's an adventure, it's a journey. You can go and spend time with your friends and have these and you can be a hero. You can have, like I said, you can have these adventures because you're going along with this person and having these incredible, wonderful experiences. And they said children, they start learning about that by by playing. And he talked about what a tragic it is when a general is right in the middle of a battle and he is giving his instructions to all of his men, and he's going over all of their assignments and what they need to go do so that they can be victorious in this battle that they're having. And then right in the middle of that just passionate speech that he's giving to all of his men, a mom comes up and tells him he needs to tie his shoe. Kind of ruins the moment, right? We need to be sensitive to what our children are doing. The play that they're engaging is serious to them. Be respectful. I remember having to learn that my children don't like to be interrupted from what they're doing any more than I like to be interrupted when I'm in the middle of something, be it reading a book, doing a project, even just, I'm going from here to there because I'm trying to get something done. So don't interrupt them. I mean, you're the mother, you need them to come in for lunch, or you need them to come in because it's time to do your music activity or your math activity, whatever. But just be respectful is what I mean in approaching them. Give them a moment to wrap up what they're doing and then come to see you, just out of respect for them. I wouldn't want to have someone call me and then I have to immediately stop what I'm doing and run. But that's what I was requiring. It was like, come on, let's go. Not paying attention to and being respectful of what they were doing. Okay, so going back to the getting involved in the story and in the adventure and being part of it. There are wonderful books out there, and this is just one author, one example, but G.A. Henty, and he is a writer. He has passed on long ago. He produced more, can you see this? Oh, sorry. He produced more than 140 books. His books are historical fiction. And so these are telling the story of something that happened, something real in history that happened, but through the eyes of the main character, who is he's a young boy. So he was writing adventure stories for boys. And I love that these adventure stories, 1832 to 1902 is when he lived. This was originally published in 1894. But, like I said, a collection of 140 of these. And I've got In Freedom's Cause. This is a story of Wallace and Bruce. The Cat of Bubastis, A Tale of Ancient Egypt. The Boy Knight, A Tale of the Crusades. This is, your child is roaming over the Italian Alps with the elephants, with Hannibal leading them. I mean, just talk about adventure. Beric the Briton, A Story of the Roman Invasion. These are fabulous, fabulous books. These are ones you could read to your children if they're younger. Read to get them started. Give to a child who is just going to love it. Many times, many times, I would start the book because I knew that you needed to have a little bit of a taste. And if I remember, I'll talk about this idea of giving them a taste. So the village of Glencairn was situated in a valley in the broken country lying to the west of the Pentland Hills, some 15 miles north of the town of Lanark, and the country around it was wild and picturesque. The villagers, for the most part, knew little of the world beyond their own valley, although a few had occasionally paid visits to Glasgow, which lay as far to the west as Lanark was distant to the south. On a spur jutting out from the side of the hill stood Glencairn Castle, whose master the villagers had for generations regarded as their lord. The glory of the little fortalice had now departed. Sir William Forbes had been killed on his own hearthstone, and the castle had been sacked in a raid by the Kerrs, whose hold lay to the southwest, and who had long been at feud with the Forbeses. The royal power was feeble, and the Kerrs had many friends, and were accordingly granted the lands they had seized. Only it was specified that Dame Forbes, the widow of Sir William, should be allowed to reside in the fortalice free from all let or hindrance, so long as she meddled not, nor sought to stir up enmity among the late vassals of her lord against their new masters. I would go on and I would read a chapter or maybe 2 chapters just to get into the book, and then just put it down. And then eventually it would show up in somebody's bedroom, you know, somebody would have it and they'd be reading it. And I love that. I love that. So you are the facilitator. You, you are the one that is bringing your children to the feast. Your responsibility is to, set the table and prepare a banquet of hors d'oeuvres. Why can't I say that? Hors d'oeuvres, appetizers. You are going to put out little appetizers, little, you know, just mini little bites, just little bite-sized pieces of whatever. And you are going to share that with your children so that then they have that little taste, you know, and they can decide whether they like that or whether they don't, you know. And some of them are going to love the things that you put out there for them, a lot of them, and others, they're going to be really picky, but they're going to eventually find the thing that they love from that little feast that you have presented for them. And you just continually do that. You put out a little spread with little bite-sized pieces. There are many more historical fiction books to use. Kate is bringing up Gerald Lund. And so you've got those historical fiction with church stories, pioneer stories, and those things. And that's wonderful. Also, I highly recommend for Moms First. And I'll tell you why. I love this. Louis L'Amour, who I used to sort of joke about, kind of make fun of. I mean, not in a really bad negative way, but I just kind of, you know, it's the cowboy writer. You know, he wrote cowboy books, and I'm not reading cowboy books. I loved horses. I was one of those crazy horse girls. So I don't know. I should have, but I didn't have an interest. And I heard about him, and I heard about the second series, and, you know, different things. But I had a recommendation from a friend who said, actually, Louis L'Amour wrote 2 historical fiction books, and they were fabulous. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I like historical fiction. So, I mean, I didn't know I did until I read some for homeschool. So I picked up his book, The Lonesome Gods. And I read that book, and it was absolutely fabulous. Oh, I shouldn't do that. You know, I do that a lot. I have these very passionate feelings about something, and then I share that, and I'm so excited about it. And then I probably build it up too much, but it's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. I recommended it to my oldest son. He read it and loved it. I recommended it to my younger one. He was, you know, I'm not sure that he wanted to do that. This is his other book, other historical fiction, The Walking Drum. Also really good. The Lonesome Gods takes place in America, the United States. It's a young boy traveling across country with his father. The mother has passed away just recently, and they're coming across to California by like stagecoach and stuff. And California, this is California at the time that they were still occupied by Mexico. It wasn't a state yet. There were missions out here. It was a very rough country. And it's the story of this young boy and his life. And the reason I was first drawn to it is because this young boy has read some of the classics, and that classic literature that he had read, he used in his life when he had hardships, trials. He used the things that he had learned from these great characters in the classical fiction novels that he was familiar with. He used their examples to hold on to during tough times. And I loved that, because I love when literature becomes something that can be a motivation. Those characters can be real to you and can help you and help strengthen you. So I gave this to Michael, my son, my youngest, and he just read it and absolutely loved it. And then this week, he was on a backpacking trip with his father and another a man from church. And they were backpacking in a place that was going to be beautiful, and it ended up being hot. And the water resources that were supposed to be up there weren't. After 9.5 miles of walking to their first night where they were going to camp out, the only water source up there was a horse trough. Good thing they had their water purification systems and everything. But anyway, they were going through and they were walking, and it was hot and dusty and a whole different experience than what they're used to. They're used to going up high and in beautiful trees, and just a very different experience. But Michael said he thought it was fun. He thought it was wonderful because he was thinking about Johannes, the main character in The Lonesome Gods. And he was, thinking about him as he was, trudging through different places and having to find a path and get back, and looking for water and going for days, and all these different things. Anyway, and so he was kind of having this little adventure in his head during this experience. And I love that. I love that. And he said, it makes me want to go and do some different kinds of kind of survival hikes and stuff like that. Anyway, I just loved it. I loved how the book came alive for him. So that's a recommendation for you mamas, those historical fiction books. It makes history come alive. It's fun to talk to my kids about history. They've had different experiences than I did. History wasn't dry textbooks. History was the lives of people who lived at that time. And their lives, how the things that were going on or in the world around them affected their personal lives. And I think that when you're teaching, you've got this option of just kind of making sure you hit all the things on your list, or you've got the opportunity to dig down really deep, just here and there on a few subjects, a few time periods, a few people. And you have a rich, full experience, really living some of your life with these people or this time period or this topic, if it's, science or math or something. And that digging deeper, it provides for a much richer experience in whatever it is that you are learning about. Also, just as a side note, another place to find great stories for your children are books like this. This is one of my favorite storytelling books. This is something I used at nighttime to tell stories to my children. This is a book by Bill Bennett. I really like him. He's who I recommend for high school history. Cannot recommend his books more highly. His history books are called America, the Last Best Hope. I've mentioned this before, but in case you didn't write that down, that is definitely something I would recommend. It's hard to find history books that are interesting and that are not too liberal. And he really tries to do a wonderful job about being non-biased. He was involved in the time period during the third volume. In fact, that caused him to hesitate writing that third volume for years. He finally was talked into it because so many people were using his book for school. Lots and lots of private schools were using them. America, the Last Best Hope by Bill Bennett. He was in Reagan's cabinet. He's written lots of beautiful books that I absolutely love. The Book of Man, who man was and should be, all the different facets of man. Yeah, highly recommend those for U.S. history books. I did first A Child's History of the World. That's for your young ones. Beautiful, amazing, wonderful book written by a man, V.M. Hillier. He was the headmaster at Calvert School, private school in Boston, I think, years and years and years ago. And he wrote this book to be their history book in school. And it's just wonderful. It is written to children. It is written on their level. It is engaging. He's telling you, it's a conversation that he's having with you as he's talking about the things that happened in history. And I absolutely love it. He also has a geography book and a history of art book. And I have all three of those, and they're beautiful, beautiful books, really respectful of the child and the child's natural curiosity. So anyway, so Child's History of the World as the beginning history book, Story of the World. Those are good books for history. They really do a good job. It's a 4-year rotation of going through the different time periods from ancient to now. And my kids had mixed feelings about it. Some of them really liked it. Some of them still thought those were a little bit boring. But I still had them read through them. I would read through them if they were really struggling with it, because I think it's important to learn history. Because if you don't, then you don't know when something that's going on in your country is wrong. You don't know why it's wrong. You don't know how to defend it. And that's something that is very important right now. Moving on then to that last set, America, the Last Best Hope, all 3 volumes, like I said. My children love that. My children go back and reread that. We got the third book for Christmas, a gift for Christmas. I mentioned this before. My husband was teasing me saying, you don't give a history book as a Christmas present. Nobody's going to want that. My kids were so excited when they opened it up and they started reading it. They were taking turns reading it Christmas morning because they were so excited about it. My daughter, when she was away at BYU, Idaho, was missing her America books and asked me to send them to her because she just wanted to reread them. Okay, so Bill Bennett, I'm answering a question here. Book of Virtues is great. The Children's Book of Heroes is wonderful. It's a sweet and good book. The stories that are in a Children's Book of Heroes are, and a Children's Book of Virtues, both of those, are in the Book of Virtues. He also has the Moral Compass, another collection of stories. That's excellent. Like I said, the Book of Man. There's another one. It might be, it's something of Home and Hearth or something, but talks about the destruction of family. What's happening? Is that the right title, Lindsay? You're nodding your head. Oh, okay. But anyway, that of Home and Hearth, but talking about that destruction of families. Lindsay, go ahead. No, come on. I want to know what you want to say.
I was just thinking, I think it's Home and Family. I was just thinking of the book. I'm like, wait, I don't think it's Home. You might be right, but I know which book you're talking about.
And it's beautiful.
Sorry.
It's a wonderful book reminding us of the importance of family and how that's been taken away from us. You know, it started with the dumbing down of, well, women being kind of ridiculed for having the job of homemaker, child rearer, you know, having that be, what do you call it when you make something less important? Anyway, but that role of women being changed and not valued. And then dad being the bumbling idiot, you know, that, did you notice that happened through commercials, through advertising, through children's shows where dad was kind of a non-entity, but the mom was the one that ran everything and did everything. Now, I'm not taking away from what moms do. We're amazing. We're super women, super mom. But dads have their place and a very important role, but that has been dumbed down. And now dads are just kind of out of the picture altogether. And that's sad, but that is how part of, you know, families have been kind of ripped apart, just the meaning of families, the importance of families. But anyway, these books are wonderful books to tell stories to your children. The book, at least this one here, the Book of Virtues, has the table of contents in the beginning lists different virtues, kind of different topics. So it goes through, and the first chapter are all stories talking about home and hearth. Maybe that's where I got that, Lindsay. The second is Into the World. The third chapter is Standing Fast. The fourth one is Easing the Path. Then Mothers and Fathers, Husbands and Wives. Then Citizenship and Leadership. And then What We Live By. I brought the Moral Compass. So those are kind of maybe a higher level topics. The Book of Virtues, which is what I was talking about, but not holding up, has more honesty, like integrity, faith, compassion, you know, different virtues. And each chapter has stories about those different virtues. And they start out with just some little poems, then some little short stories, and then maybe even articles, letters, and essays that were written that are more for adults. But each chapter graduates from the child's version to the adult version. Okay, and then let me answer this question. Who wrote Child's History of the World? V.M. Hillier. So Calvert Schools has since republished that book. It used to be super hard to get rid of. My parents found the set for me at a garage sale, but now you can order A Child's History of the World because they've reprinted it and it's available and it's just wonderful. There was I think it was the history, I can't remember if it was in the history one or the geography one, but just for an example, as he starts out and he's telling you a story, he first talks about a child who is outside with their nurse. You know, so these are back in the days, you know, children had their nurse or their governess or something, and she was outside going to get him again because he had gone back outside and he was back behind the bush at the back of the yard, and he was back to digging his hole. And the child had been digging and digging and digging this hole because he was trying to dig to China, because he had heard that the people in China who were on the other side of the world, and he had seen some pictures of them and he wanted to know more about them. So he was digging a hole to China. And so the author then talks to the child and says, have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about digging a hole to China? Digging through the earth all the way through until you got to the other side and were able to see the people that walk upside down on the earth? I mean, it's just written, and it's a very childlike way of writing, something that appeals to children, that helps them to be interested and involved and want to be a part of that story. Another one, he's talking about the beginning of the earth, and then talks about, back at the time of Noah. And he was talking about the rains that came. And when he's describing the rains, he says it rained and it rained and it rained. And on the page, the type goes, and A-N-D space I-T space R-A-I-N-E-D. And then again, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And how fun. I know it's a tiny little thing, but it's important, and that connects to a child's heart. It's like if you've read A.A. Milne and you read his books and you're reading as he's talking about Winnie the Pooh, and he's tumbling down, his head as it's thumping down the stairs, or you're reading about Tigger and being stuck in the tree. And, these writers knew children. They wrote to children. They wrote to reach a child's heart. And so it's wonderful to put these things in front of your children and give them those opportunities to read these stories. Look up for me if you can. There's a story that's in the Book of Virtues and in the Children's Book of Virtues. Oh, I don't have it, so I'm not going to be able to tell you. If somebody wants to find that or knows it, it's a story, darn it, I don't remember his name. He's a king or a prince or something, and he's out riding with his men. They're all on horseback, and he's got his hawk. Do you know that story about the hawk? And the king has stopped for a drink. Anybody know that story that's out there? Anybody, now, do your kids know that story? Would any of them know it well enough to retell it? Or do you? I'm looking at Lindsay because she's nodding her head. I love that story. It's a rich and a wonderful story. A very simple story, but I think you could retell it if you don't want to, put your kids on the spot.
I'm looking for it. So I remember reading it, but it's probably been 2 years since we read that story, and I can't find it.
And do you have
the big one?
Yeah. Do you have the children's one?
Yeah. So I have.
And if you have it, could you? Yes, Jen. Yes. Okay, Jen knows. Jen doesn't have a microphone. But Jen says yes, and the hawk keeps him from drinking. Yes. Yeah. So you have the children's book? And Lindsay froze. So if she has the book and holds it up for us, we'll be able to see that. Oh, here you are. You're back. Yeah. Did you find it?
Let me flip it around. How do I flip I'll just hold it like this. I don't know how to do it.
No, I know. So I love that book.
This one, yes. I like this one because it has pictures. So for visual learners, so they have like the big giant book, but there's no pictures. So this has the same stories with pictures.
Right.
And I do know that story, yeah. But
I know I'm putting you on that spot, and that makes you feel nervous, but you would do a good job telling it.
Me? I don't know. The King and His Hawk.
The King and His Hawk is the name of the story.
Page 44 of that book.
Okay, so I'm not going to make you do it. I'm not going to make you do it.
Yeah, I'd have to read it real quick.
I'm just going to tell it, and it will be a very poor retelling, but it was years ago, years and years and years ago. But here's this king, and he's out, and I don't even know what he's doing, but you'll read the story, and you'll know, and you'll remember, and you can tell it to your children. But he is out with his men, and they're on horseback, and he's got his hawk, and they stop because they're thirsty, and they stop, and he wants to get a drink. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love the pictures. And the king has this silver cup, and that's the cup that he uses when he stops to get a drink. And they come to a spring or a a creek or a something. And the king is so thirsty and he wants to get a drink. And so he takes his silver cup and he goes to the water, to the source of the water, and he goes and he scoops up some water in his cup and goes to get a drink. And his hawk flies down and knocks the cup out of his hand. And the king is kind of frustrated and picks the cup back up again and takes that silver cup and goes and gets another drink. Scoops up some more water in that silver cup and goes to take a drink. And as he's getting ready to take a drink, the hawk comes down again and knocks that cup out of his hand. And the king is so frustrated and upset with this bird. And I think it happens a third time, and he goes and scoops up again to go get a drink and has that cup, and the hawk comes down again and knocks that cup out of the king's hand. And I think the cup rolls to a, I don't know, place that he can't get to it or something like that, up on the ledge up above or something like that. And the king is so angry that he kills his hawk. And I don't know if he, bow and arrow, is that what it was? I don't remember, but he kills that hawk. And then he's frustrated and he's upset, and he goes to go retrieve his cup, and he goes and climbs up above where the water is, where the water's falling from, to go get his cup. And up there, lying in the pool, the source from the water is coming from, is a dead, I don't know what, does anybody remember? But a dead animal, right? A dead something lying there in the pool. That water is diseased or poisoned or something. Oh, I know, it was a dead poisonous snake. That's what it was, lying there up in the source for that water. And so that hawk was saving the king's life by keeping him from drinking that water. And the king was just brokenhearted. He was so, so sad. He had just killed this trusted friend and companion. And Kate, you know the story? No, okay, this is new to you. And so the king learned in that moment that he needed to govern his emotions, and be more controlled. I can't remember if there was another lesson from that story. Lindsay, do you remember if there was another lesson from that? No? I know, I'm trying so hard to engage you guys because I don't want to be the only one talking. I don't want to make you crazy just hearing my voice the whole time.
Well, I'll add that is on my list of books to read to my children, but I struggle because these are the stories I feel like they should have gotten when they were a little younger. And now my oldest is starting 9th grade. And so he's already saying, "Oh, Mom, this is for kids. You should read it to the youngest one, who is 10 years old, or almost 10. And so I've got these attitudes I'm working with, and I'm trying to find the stories that are best fitting for them, that still teach these principles. And I might just have to bring food and say, look, we're going to finish this story today, and we're going to reward you with this food, because food speaks to him. He's a teenager, and he will do that. But we just got through, we just finished some of the Tuttle Twin books on America and the values and principles that are based in America. So it's awesome. But they're kids books, the ones that I have. I need to get some that are more appropriate for the age ranges that I'm getting. So anyway, I've had this book of virtues that you're mentioning for a long time, and for whatever reason never got around to it. And I might just have to insist that we're going to do this one. This one is going to be fun, because they roll their eyes and they don't want to do it, they say, but ultimately when you finish and we've had the discussion and everybody's ready to go doing their own thing, they almost always have, you can tell they're lighthearted. They may not be like, "Thanks, Mom, that was great," but they're lighthearted, they're happier, they're I don't know, there's something, they've definitely learned something from it. So I might have to do this.
Yeah, well, you've affected their heart. You brought something, you've given them something that has affected their heart, and that makes a difference. And your teenagers may never tell you, "That was so wonderful, I love that," but they're gonna like it. And what I put in the comments, if we liked the story, just hearing the story, they're gonna like it too. They just might not admit that to you.
Kate, I want to tell you something. And on my mission president's wife, for every zone conference, would read us a children's book. And I mean, all these missionaries, 40 missionaries or whatever, And she would sit there and she'd hold it up and she'd turn the pages. And afterwards, it was the best discussion. And she would talk about the value of that, or the moral story in that book. And everybody listened. These 19, 20-year-old boys and 21, 22-year-old girls, you know, we're all like mesmerized by this storybook she was telling us or reading to us. And it taught me that, you know, if it's a good story and it is engaging, it's timeless and all ages. And even I will get engaged in one of the books that we have for our kids here, you know, but yes, I have that book as well, but of course it's in storage right now. And I'm so wishing I had it because I had forgotten how great it was. Anyway, but I'm glad you brought that because I had forgotten that on my mission, that's what she did.
Yeah.
Because I know older kids can check out. So, and anyway, but yeah.
I love that. I love that story. I think that's wonderful. I'm trying to look up C.S. Lewis's quote about children's book. Does anybody know that? Is anyone familiar with that?
I don't know it verbatim, but it's something like a children's book that, I don't know, not good for children is not good for adults. I'm totally butchering that.
No. He multiple ones. One of them, you're right on. A children's story that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's story in the slightest, is one of it.
I love that.
Another one, no book is really worth reading at the age of 10, which is not equally and often far more worth reading at the age of 50 and beyond.
Okay, and I would so suggest that this applies for movies and cartoons as well, because there are some cartoons that I've seen in my lifetime that I cringe. Like, it's just, and I can't stand letting my kids, no matter how young they were, get through it because it was so grating on my nerves. Whereas there were other stories and cartoons that I was like,
they're beautiful.
Uplifts me, and even if I don't have to watch it, I don't mind it on in the background. It's soothing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then there are cartoons that were written by intelligent people that had levels of meaning, and those are the ones that are fun for a family to watch together. You know, we have a whole collection of you know, Bugs Bunny, old you know, cartoons. But even children's shows, you know, as a mama, if you've got little ones, be very careful what you're letting them watch. Think about the messages that are being given in these in these shows. A lot of times in these children's shows, popular children's shows, the message is, oh, your parents don't know anything. Oh, your parents are just silly and dumb. We, the kids, we know stuff. What we are doing is important, and the parents are saying or doing is not. You know, just these negative attitudes. And if you're a parent and you're trying to figure out, well, then what do I show them? I mean, I was very, like, they couldn't watch, we never watched Rugrats because I just didn't like the negative attitudes there, the calling children Rugrats. I mean, just the #1 title stopped me there. But anyway, but I found Little Bear. And you can go and look up Little Bear online. And Maurice Sendak's Little Bear is a gentle, sweet, wonderful cartoon that is just, I would listen to my kids just giggling in the other room, you know, and they were good friends. And I mean, they would have little arguments. They would have some type of something happened in the story where a conflict and they had to resolve it, but it was just beautifully done. And family was a mom and a dad, and it was just, I loved it. And there were grandparents involved in the story. And it was just great. Kate.
I was going to say, I think Kipper the dog also was that for me. Very calming and soothing. And they were just out having some adventures, and it was sweet. But then I talked to a fellow friend who that one bothered her. And I said, what is it that bothers you? And she's like, I don't know. It just, but then she liked a different one that I didn't, the whiny kid. I can't remember his name, but he was constantly whining. Caillou, I think.
Oh yeah.
I can't. Yeah, there are just some things that I was like, well, obviously we had different tastes, and I respected her tastes,
right,
but I had a totally different opinion, and I don't know where we got different opinions from. But at the same time, it's nice to find other ideas or stories that we can relate to and I still think back to Kipper the dog. In fact, we're on the list to get a puppy, and Kipper is one of the names that I would love because of those fond memories of when my little kids were tiny.
Right. I love that. And there are certain ones that just kind of fit with your family culture.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's good. But just as a parent, be aware. Pay attention to what they're listening to and experiencing. That's important.
I want to put in a plug for getting away from cartoons at an early age. My little kids have watched Little House on the Prairie their entire life.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very slow moving show in some ways, but it's taught them to not have to be entertained by quick cartoons.
Right.
And to think through what's happening next and the moral implications behind it. Also, we watch a lot of old movies, black and white, and that challenges their patience as well because it's not as fast paced, but they have to kind of wait for the plot and figure things out. So I didn't know I was doing that. I just kind of liked those shows from my growing up, but a lot of their peers can't stand to sit through it. They're like, what the heck is this?
Right.
These old movies or whatever. But
they have to have their phones with them to be watching.
So I think there's great value in having them watch things that are kind of quieter or slower or a little bit less flashy, so that they learn to listen and to pay attention to the details of the story. But I mean, like Little Women we've watched all the versions, and Pride and Prejudice and things like that, because it's just, there's so much there's a lot of good you can find, and it doesn't have to be cheesy or cartoony or whatever.
Absolutely. And you're not going to ruin your children by not letting them have those experiences. I remember when I started telling parents that I didn't like Sesame Street. I like the characters. There's some sweet characters, but it moves so fast. It's just changing all the time. And if you will put that on just for yourself and watch how quickly they move from one thing to another, you are training your child to have a very short attention span. Is that what you want? I mean, as a mama, you want the opposite of that. You want them to have an increasingly longer attention span. And Kathy, what you did was brilliant. And it's wonderful that we're kind of inspired to do a thing. We don't even know. It's just natural. It just kind of happens, but it ends up being this huge blessing for our families.
Yeah.
So I learned that Mr. Rogers, in contrast, that was a face on the screen, interacting with your child, and long segments and things that it had to do with real life and families. But I love Little House on the Prairie, the story, and getting engaged with a family and having it be a slower paced thing. No wonder kids don't get into books, anymore. You have to wait you have to be introduced to the characters, and it slowly develops, and those are the best stories. But kids, they want something that's, immediate gratification, right? Something right now. I remember my daughter bringing home some college friends, and we were trying to watch a movie together. And these kids are all on their phones. They can't just sit and watch a movie. They've got to be doing something else while they're there. They can't just completely get involved in the experience. So wonderful idea to train them young in those matters of, kind of attention, increasing that. I was waiting to see if you were going to say something else.
I was going to say in this world that our kids are being prepared for is so media driven, and I think a lot of what I wanted to do was keep them from it, but I realized that I have to teach them about it and how to find the good. Mm-hmm. And if I don't do that while they're young and where they're going to listen to me, then I don't think I'll have a chance later on. And I may not even when, they kind of get to where they're more independent and they want to try things out. But I just think that it's important to acknowledge that their world will be different than ours. And they have to be engaged in it somewhat. Where we might have to memorize facts and things like that, they can look it up at the drop of a hat.
Right.
And so it's more important that they have a righteous character and a good work ethic and can, be honest and have integrity in all that they're doing. And so I think that those things are more valuable than when we grew up memorizing facts, because we only had the encyclopedia that we may not have had in our house, so, or the library. But anyway, so it's really, it's an ongoing training for us as parents, because we don't know exactly, this is not our world that we are training them for and teaching them. It's theirs, and we need to kind of be on the forefront and figuring out how to guide them in it.
You know, that's what I think is interesting about parents that are trying so hard to do what was done before and not letting go of that. You know, like you said, we don't know what the world is like that our children are going to be a part of. We really don't. When you think about how much has changed just this past, 8 months, it's incredible. And so why would we suppose that we know what it's going to be like or what they're going to need? But Heavenly Father knows. And so that's why it's so important to follow those promptings. And going back for a moment to Well-Educated Heart, if you will go and read the welcome to video that Marlene has posted there, I think it will prick your heart. She shares about why she started Libraries of Hope, which she started years ago. She felt the need to start collecting stories that were written in this golden age of children's literature, stories that didn't have all the ugly, that's involved in today's stories, many of today's stories. I use blanket statements a lot. Just insert whatever you need to make it not be offensive, most of the time or some of the time or whatever. And yes, it's being recorded. And I will put it, Michael will edit it for me and put it up on my little YouTube channel. But she felt this need to do this, and she didn't know why she was being driven to do it, but she felt it so strongly. So she started collecting these stories, and she got so much negative from people around her, or apathy. People were just like, why are you doing that? What? Nobody cares about that. Kids today don't want to read those kinds of stories.
Wow.
And we experience that, right? But she just marched on, and she kept doing it, and she has worked full time most of this time period collecting stories and art and history and music and all of this, and put it into books and made it available online for free. All of this because of impressions that she felt she was doing this, and that there would be moms prepared that would need this information someday. And she just kept doing it. And now she's finally seeing, oh, here are the moms. This is where they are. Now they're coming. And they're coming by the hundreds that are just eating up what she has provided out there. And she'll say, I'm not the founder of the Well-Educated Heart. I'm the finder. And I'm still finding. And I just love that. That's a woman that you want to link arms with, as we're moving forward in this battle to train that next generation who is going to be here, for some incredible things, who are going to have to protect the freedoms that we have, and who knows what else. I don't know. I don't, I guess sometimes, but I don't know. But, we need to link arms together as mamas and move forward together in this journey of building up our children, of building that foundation, of fully engaging their hearts. These kids that are out involved in these protests, this is a thought that I've had. These are kids whose hearts haven't been reached. Their parents have, and I'm not blaming the parents because I have no idea what happened in all these different situations. So it's not a blaming thing, but just somehow along the way, the parents have lost that child's heart and aren't connecting with them, or the parents have that same problem. Maybe that's a multi-generational thing, but these are just what were sweet little children who have lost their way, don't have a purpose, don't have something real to fight for, but just want to have something to care about, something that matters in their lives, and they've just gotten horribly misdirected. But we need to fill our children's hearts with beauty and love and truth, and help them so that they can go out into the world and make a difference. In their ways, even if it's making the difference in their homes. You see as mamas what a difference it makes when you are filling your children's lives with something positive, because you see that grow in them. That is the best, most important work. The most important thing you can ever do is that work. And we're all in it together, you know, so we're trying to help each other. I'm going to go to one more subject. Oh, I'm going to go to this, at least. Oh, hold on. I need to give you the other one first. This is the book we've used in our home. Oh, I got it at a library book sale, you know, just a coffee table book, right? Of Monet, just because that was easily accessible, right? I had that and a Van Gogh. And when my children were little, we would just look at art. I had no experience with art and had never even, I mean, aside from what I ran into in school, just had zero experience in my growing up years. But I wanted to know it. I wanted it to be a part of my life. So I bought the little book and we looked at it and I could appreciate some of the pictures. I started learning things from my homeschool research about art and the importance of teaching that. And then I found out about an art exhibit that was coming to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, right? LACMA. And it was an Impressionist exhibit. And I'd heard that Impressionism was easily accessible. And so I thought, okay, this is wonderful. And I was super excited about taking my children to a museum to be able to see art, real art in person. And so Stevie and Sarah were like 7 and or 6 and 4 maybe, and Kate was just a baby I wore all my babies, you know, so she was in a sling, and she was maybe like 18 months, something like that. And we went to a museum, and it was this Impressionist exhibit that came from the Puszkin Museum in Poland. And this collection of art had never been outside of Poland before. This was the first time. And that to me was just kind of cool. The idea that something that I would have had to have gone to Poland if I ever wanted to see it was going to be in Los Angeles, you know, 2.5 hours away from me. So we went, and I had got the dirtiest looks from so many people as I walked in with my children to this art exhibit. I would counsel you, as the old mother of the group, that you train your children, that you work on training them how to behave when they're in public spaces, how to behave when they're out among people. It's not okay that just because they're children and they're little that they run around like, you know, crazy hooligans. That's not respectful of the other people that are there. I am all for babies and children. They're my favorite people on this planet. I would much rather spend my time talking to children than talking to adults any day. Like, I would rather have this Zoom conference be me and your kids. Way rather do that. That's just my comfort level. It's just, those are my people. But there are times when they need to behave a certain way. I was just listening to a talk the other day, and it was a beautiful, wonderful talk. I think it was the one that you posted, Kathy. It was Elder Oaks, but in the background is this baby crying and crying and crying and crying. And I thought, okay, I would be the one to go get that baby and take the baby out, and I would have a blast hanging out with the baby. It wouldn't be like, you know, shut up this child, I'm gonna go get that child and take him out. No. I would absolutely love that experience, but that child needed to be taken out so that the rest of the people there, you know, could have that experience. So teach your children, practice with them. We practiced at home all the time. We practiced for sacrament meeting, you know, and I can't tell you how many times people would say, oh man, you're so lucky. I wish my children would sit quietly on the bench at sacrament meeting, you know. Boy, you just have it made with those kids. Like, well, not that I really need you to congratulate me on how much work I have put into this, but I have put work into this. It didn't just happen. They don't just sit there because they don't have any interest in, you know, in playing or talking or whatever. And it's not like I don't have many moments on the bench where I'm, you know, looking down the bench, and we learned sign language earlier, and saying, no, that is not okay. Or I took them out multiple times to bring them in again, many times. Anyway, we had to work at it. We practiced it. We even had a family home evening one night where we had grandma and grandpa and my husband and I, and we sat in the front row. We set up rows in the family room, and we put on a new Disney movie that the kids were dying to see. We put the adults in the front and the kids in the row behind us. And then we started talking and whispering and leaning over and, you know, engaging with each other during the beginning of the movie. And the kids were going nuts behind us because they couldn't see, they couldn't hear, and they wanted to see this movie. And then after they got sufficiently frustrated back there, then we paused the movie and we had a little mini lesson about just being distracting when you're sitting in front of people by all that movement and talking and whatever. And it was a great lesson. They never forgot that lesson because it mattered to them, you know. But anyway, practice that before you go out. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have some moments, but if you practice, it goes a little bit better. But anyway, so I was getting all these dirty looks by people because I was bringing my children into this museum to see these impressionist works of art. So we get in there and I have no idea what to expect, you know. But we get in and we go into the rooms where there are these pieces of art by Van Gogh and by Mary Cassatt and by Monet and Manet and I can't remember who else. But I stood in front of my first painting and just had this incredibly spiritual experience. It was absolutely amazing to me. I couldn't believe how much it touched my heart. But from that moment on, I've had this passion about art and I absolutely love it. My children had similar experiences. They had brought some of their money, but you know, I didn't know why and what they'd want to do with it, you know, but we went into the little gift shop afterwards and the paintings that they had fallen in love with, they bought a little, either the print of the painting or a little souvenir, whatever. My son, the oldest, he has those 2 prints of Van Gogh that he bought that day, now framed, and they're hanging in his home. And they were ones that he just fell in love with. And Sarah has a magnet, because that's all that she could afford, of Monet's water lilies, you know. But eventually when she went to Europe, she got to see that in person, you know. Art touches your heart in a way that nothing else can. And there's something incredible about bringing those things into your home. And this is one I got too, library book sale. This is the National Gallery of Art. It's all the pieces that are in that gallery. It is absolutely amazing. And since I got to go to that, I look through and say, oh, I saw that, you know, when I get to read more about it and look and see more about it. You put those things out for your children too, just so that they have access to it. Be willing to go and stretch a little bit, you know, maybe go to a museum, go listen to classical music. That's another thing that parents don't have a lot of experience with. Maybe if you didn't have that in college, maybe that's not something that you have a natural love for, but you can groom that love for classical music in your own heart. And sometimes reading the stories about the composers can help introduce you to that. There are also a lot of children CDs for children, like classical music for kids, that are a great introduction for you as well as your children, because it was for me. I didn't know about them, you know. Yeah, Kathy.
So I'm gonna mess up this story really bad, but you'll get the idea. My sister, who homeschooled a little while, 30 years ago, for her a couple years for her little boys, I was her nanny, and she was telling me this story of a woman who was meeting one evening. Her bishop came into her home, and her kids had grown, and she was talking about how lonely she was, and her boys were all off in their careers, and she was telling him that they were a sea captain or a Navy officer, all these different things. And they were talking for a while about all the things that she wanted to discuss or whatever. Then after a little while, he said to her, how long have you had that piece of art, that beautiful painting of the ship on your wall? And she's, oh, it's been there forever, since my kids were little. And he said, well, it had an influence on your children because they all went into a career with the ocean, you know, and ships and stuff. And so it just made, you know, quite an impact and taught us that things that are around our children, hanging on the walls, art, things we impress upon them will make a difference in their future choices. So that was an interesting story. I messed it up. I'm sure I got it.
No, I'm so glad you shared that. That story was retold in conference because
okay, good. That's what
I remember hearing it in conference too.
Okay, good.
It's a beautiful example of the impact of what we have in our homes, what we value, what we show that we value, and how that impacts our children. And Marlene was talking about, I was listening to one of her recordings about art and something that I didn't know at all. And it was this time period in art, and I can't remember like maybe 1850s to, you know, something. And it was a period in art when when a lot of these artists, their focus was families, mothers, homes, children, families. It's the art that you see Marlene post all the time on Well Educated Art and Libraries of Hope. It's that art. She went and she found this collection of these, like, I don't remember what she said, like 8,000 pieces of art or something like that. And she went through every one of them, and she took about 2,000 of them. And those are ones that she has made available to us as mamas to be able to see. I mean, we can have access to it through when she tells us where you can go to get them and everything. But as art was changing, you know, and I don't know if any of you have seen, oh, I don't know if it was PragerU or something else, but my daughter was telling me about it. And it was an art experiment that a professor did. And I probably mentioned this in a previous one too, but an art professor who's showing modern art to his class, and he's asking them to critique it, you know, and there's some modern art that I like, but this idea of modern art is only about breaking the rules, you know, and it's whatever it's your self-expression or whatever. No, the art has a definition, you know, there is something that is art and something that art is not. But anyway, so this professor is doing this experiment with his class. So he shows them a couple of pieces of modern art and has them critique it. So the students are saying these, you know, things. I mean, I'm obviously, look, I already kind of was making fun of it in my actions, the way I was telling you the story, but it's because I think it's silly that you can say that there's something of meaning in in the pieces that he was showing. Anyway, and he's having them talk about him and everything, and then he zooms out, and it's his paint apron. It's the paint splatters and the mess and everything that is on the apron that he uses when he's painting. It's not a work of art. It's not a painting. It's not abstract art. It's his apron. And he was trying to make a point, which which I think he made well to, if not that class, to my family when they watched that video. But art is something significant. Art is a gift from heaven that can have an impact on our hearts. And can be something that moves us. And this body of art, once art became this thing where you were critiquing it, and it had all these, I mean, it does have rules, but where the emphasis became on critiquing it, not on enjoying it, art started changing and evolving in a not so good way. And there were people who pulled that family category of art off of the walls and put it in storage, because it didn't have whatever it was that they thought it needed to have to be important works of art. And so that art disappeared really from the public eye for a long, long time. And I think it's really interesting that happened. It's not surprising. That would fit in with Satan's way of doing things, you know, a little subtle, just kind of, here, I'll just take that away from you while you're not looking. And you won't even know that it existed, you know. And here Marlene has been directed to find it and is bringing it back to us and suggesting, put these up on the walls of your home. Here, I've given you these pieces. You can print them out. You can print out a colored picture of it. You can put up a bulletin board in each of your kids' rooms, and you change the art out, you know, in their rooms or in the kitchen, on the fridge, in wherever. But you start putting these images of home and family and children and playing and working. And that's the message that you give to your children through the art in your home. Kate, were you going to say something?
Oh, yes, but I didn't want to interrupt what you're saying because it's also really good. And you've like led me to a branch of other comments that I wanted to add in.
Good.
So on the thoughts of good art is disappearing, I went on I don't know where to start. There's so many. Anyway, I went on a cruise ship years ago, and the artwork was beautiful. I felt uplifted, and they purposefully put the artwork on each floor, different artwork on each floor, so that you know, because you're only there a week, if that, right? You know which floor you're on, and you can remember, oh, this is not my cabin, because all of the floors look very similar. There's a few changes here and there, but it's such a big ship. You have to find your bearing. And by the end of the week, you know where you are. But by the first several days, you're still trying to find your bearing. Anyway, my point is beautiful artwork was on every floor. So as you're going down the flights of stairs, you'd know, oh, I'm on this floor, that floor, this floor, and you'd memorize my floor is on this with this artwork, right? So that was how your point of reference. The next 7 years later, I was hired to go interpret as a sign language interpreter on that same ship. They had the same plays, the same, you know, a lot of the same things going on, but the artwork had totally changed. And it was very drab and very like just dull and not heartwarming, nothing uplifting about it. Stuff that was very modern, you know, and I was so heartbroken because I was like, I could tell, I sensed a difference, but I didn't understand why until I read the next year from doing that, this book. It's
Yes.
this Goodreads account. Is it backwards?
No.
Oh, no? Okay. It's The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. And it's a big book, and you've probably seen it around. I had seen it as a child on the bookshelves of some of the people that I revere the most. So, for example, in my grandparents' home and in my, you know, like certain homes I'd go to and I'd spy it every time, probably because there was a naked man on it. And as a kid, I was like, oh, that's got to be a bad book. You know, why is that on the shelves of my parents or my grandparents? But it's
and it's red and black. I mean, it really stands out on the bookshelf. It really does.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, but I spied it at several different homes, so much so that I thought maybe it's not a bad book because the people's homes that it's on the shelves that it's sitting in are really good people I admire. So anyway, as an adult, I remembered that as a kid, and I looked it up and I read this book. And it talks basically, and why he called it The Naked Communist is because it takes communism and breaks it down into all the bullet points. You discuss the manifesto, Karl Marx, the maker of Marxism and that philosophy. You learn about his history, his past, his family, what his life was like as a kid and as an adult, a father, and all of these things. And you learn about the psychological damage that not only he had, but also he perpetuated onto his family, and the outcome of his family life is heartbreaking. Like, you know, you learn all of this, and then you learn about the government establishment that he's setting up and perpetuating and suggesting, and then he even kills his own best friend to get to a better place in the hierarchy so that he can accomplish those deeds. It's just sickening, and yet at the same time really enlightening, because you realize, well, we want to perpetuate truth. We want to be on God's side. And you see, by the time you get to the end of the book, it's like communism is stripped down to understand everything, where it comes from, how to combat it. He even at the end talks about how to keep communism out of your country. It is so powerful, and I appreciated that I thought, okay, this is great. But my point to all of this artwork stuff is that was one of the tenets of communism is to get, or Marxism is to take away beautiful art. Anything inspiring and uplifting, you dumb it down, you get rid of it, because it is it suggests creativity and ingenuity and all these good virtues that we have, that people have to offer. But if you stop those, and if you diminish those, and you don't respect them, and you don't value them, then the ideas they go away, right? Yeah. So when I read that book, I thought of that cruise ship, and I thought, oh, they probably don't realize that they're buying into this subtle, you know, mindset. They just think they're updating their artwork. Mm-hmm. But how tragic it is. And the next year I went on another cruise ship by the same cruise line, and same thing happened there. I was just heartbroken. And I thought, you know, this is a sign to me that we can rise above, but we need to teach our children the difference between inspiring art and uninspiring art. There is a method to the madness, and we need to combat that by education.
Right. The thing is that you noticed, because you had experienced the art being there and then the absence of it, you noticed and you felt that. It's like when we send people out into somebody's home to visit them, like a ministering visit, in the church. Part of the reason we do that is we go into their home, they can feel the spirit. We leave, they feel the absence of the spirit. Now, since they have experienced it, there's something that they now want, because it felt good. That was a familiar feeling because it's home, and they want that back in their lives. And so this is kind of what you're doing for your children. You are giving them these moments of experiencing the good and the beautiful, which is kind of why, that curriculum is called that, obviously. But you're bringing these little bites, these little wonderful morsels of something beautiful and good to them so that they can have tasted it and they will know the absence of it. This idea of putting your children out in the world when they're young, and that's hard for me because I think, they're not ready. Yeah, they can be a great influence. Yes, they can. They'll be an even greater influence if you can spend a lot of time preparing them, planting all these things in their hearts so that then they can go out into the world and they can also bring those things to the people around them. But what an interesting, I love that story. That's going to become one of my stories that I tell because of that difference that you experienced with the art. And a lot of times art like that changes because someone's come up and said, I'm really offended by those pictures you have in the hall. It's all pictures of family. Family doesn't all look like that now. You've got a mother and a father and whatever, and family now. And so in an effort to not be offensive or to not have lawsuits, because we're now the world of lawsuits, they take down the good, the beautiful, the heartwarming, and put up something neutral, non-feeling, and that idea of people not rising up. I'm sorry, I'm already jumping ahead, but that's what it does. You take away all those things from the people and their lives are just dreary and dull. And they don't have new ideas. They don't have beautiful, uplifting thoughts. They don't lift their head up to think or imagine or see something higher or something more. And so that's how you perpetuate those types of, socialism, communism and Marxism. That's how you perpetuate that, is that through taking away those good things. So wouldn't it make sense that as mamas, what we're doing is bringing that back and giving that to them? And again, the best way to do that is you enrich your life. You spend time and you let them see you doing those things, reading those things and enjoying those things. And even music, experiencing music. Marlene will share, if you don't have money for your kids to have music lessons, they have their voices and that's free. Sing with them, bring music into your home. Music has such a great power over our hearts. Do not neglect that super simple, very easy way to change the atmosphere in your home. Put on some classical music in the background. So many people now have the fancy little speakers, so just tell your speaker, play, classical music. If you don't know what to play, maybe suggest even classical music for kids, something like that, but just play it. If you play it low enough in the background, it'll just become kind of the soundtrack, of their lives. My kids, our family, my husband, kids, and I will talk about what's your soundtrack, and different days you have different soundtracks. But, and one of my daughters dreams with a soundtrack. She'll talk about the soundtrack that's in the back of her dreams. She's very, very musical. That's a huge part of her life. And so I just loved when I heard that. I thought that was really fun. Anyway, mamas, you are the best ones. Reminder, you are the best ones to teach and train your children. There is nobody, no matter the amount of experience, the number of degrees they have, there is no one who is more equipped, better prepared, who has been gifted this opportunity, responsibility, privilege of teaching and training your children. You are the ones that are best suited for that. You will have a much better, much easier time if you choose to invite the Lord in that walk with you. He knows them better, far better than you do. He knows them intimately, and he knows everything about them. Heavenly Father knows them, knows they were his before they were yours. They are still his. You will be returning them to him. You will be held accountable for you know, the time that you had with them. That's a stewardship responsibility. That's something I take seriously. The great blessing in that huge responsibility is that he cares so much about that he will help you every step of the way. He knows them so well that he can tell you, he can explain to you the problem you're having with this child this month or something. You know, he can say, well, you know, you need to try this. Have you thought about that? If you were to do this thing with them, I think you'd find, you know, things would change. He may be teaching you patience, and there may not be any great new wonderful answers for a while, because you're learning a lesson while you think that you're teaching your children. So be patient, trust in the Lord, follow that admonition and the counsel from the prophet to hear him, hear the Lord, hear those messages of personal inspiration that are there for you, and trust in them. Let go of all the old ideas and the systems and the how-tos, and trust your heart and trust him. Just enjoy your children. There is plenty of time for curriculum and for formal lessons. And he'll give you what you need there, but you need to plant goodness in there and beauty in their hearts. And you need to build that foundation first. You need to have their hearts, or you're not going to get much else into them. And that, like Marlene said, they're going to forget 90% of the facts and things that they learn anyway. So why are you spending time making yourself and them crazy, working on that, when you could be enjoying the time, growing your hearts together? Thank you, Kate. I love that you guys are putting these notes in here too. It's just fabulous. I hope there's been something positive here for you. This is hard for me to put myself out there. I don't, you know, I'll get off these and I'll kind of laugh with my family or friends and say, you know, they listen to me as if I know what I'm talking about, you know. So I hope you know that this is my very humble offering. I know that in my comments, I'm very strongly opinionated. I am, that's just me. That's why the charter thing didn't work for me. I just can't have anybody telling me what to do. That didn't work very well for me. No, thank you. I'm gonna do what I wanna do. So, but my offering to you is a humble offering. This is just the stuff that I've learned. It's been beneficial. I've seen just such beauty and strength and purity and goodness go out of my home through my children. And it is heartwarming to me. I'm so grateful. I have been blessed with children who have decided so far to this point to stay with the things that we've taught them. You know, they have their agency. That could change any day, and I know that. They could be hit with something that just rocks them and throws them off course. And I've been preparing for that, you know, this whole time. I've been knowing that could happen, but so far we've been blessed, and they're still with us. And I'm so grateful for that. And there's nothing that is going to guarantee you that they are going to stay on the path. But there are a lot of things that are going to make that outcome a lot more likely. It's going to definitely increase your odds. So do those things that you know you should be doing. Family prayer, family scripture study. You know, if you're, most of the people we talk to are members of our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you're not, you're still Christians and you're with us because we're on the same team. We're listening to the same God. Just know that he is there and that he's listening to you, and that spending time with him is important. You make that sacrifice and you spend a little bit of your day with him, even if it has to be those early morning dark hours before your kids are awake. That was painful for me when I got that instruction from him years ago, but I did it, and we were blessed for it. At one point, this is very personal, but at one point I received a blessing just in very recent years, and the Lord, in that blessing, I was told that because of our efforts, because of our listening to the instruction that we received and doing those things, that we had been blessed with a full measure of the Spirit in our home. I never even I never paid attention to that phrase before. I never thought of it as a goal or a desire, you know, to have that in my home. But when I heard that praise, it just really was a huge, I don't know, just really a tender moment for me. And I have felt so grateful for that. That is what you want, because your children will receive the messages. If you have that spirit in your home, when their hearts are open, they'll receive it. So work to open their hearts, work to have that spirit in your home, spend that time with the Lord that you need to, so that you can bring these incredible blessings to your children, just, little by little in tiny ways. Make sure you give yourself credit at the end of the day for the tiny victories, because nobody else is going to. It's just going to be you, and that's okay. And the Lord, you can tell Heavenly Father every night, this was hard. It was a hard day. Nobody really, I don't feel like anybody appreciates me, but I'm trying so hard. And He'll help you have that moment of feeling good about what you're doing. And that's good enough. That is enough. So carry on. Move forward in this great battle that we are involved in. I really do want to have a week where we talk about the freedom in this country. And I think, Kate, you're probably going to be on screen for that one. So we'll talk about that. But that is coming. Mamas, if you're not part of the email group, if you want to join, I do these pathetic little emails once a week. I don't know if they're any good for anybody, but I send them out with just a couple of little things. That's the email address if you want to be part of that. You can also share your thoughts, things you want us to talk about on these Friday emails. Kate, did you want to say something? Okay. Anybody else have any comments they want to make? I know these are long. They just keep going.
That was great. Thank you very much.
No, you're very sweet. You're my cheerleader. You help me keep going when I'm just so embarrassed having to get on screen and say anything.
You should never be embarrassed. It was great. So, but sorry, I've been kind of in and out today because I've been moving the trailer. So
No, what an adventure. I love it. I absolutely love it. Lindsay's gone from exercising, showering, doing something in her kitchen to being in her car. So
Yes, we're on our way to the beach right now.
oh, wonderful. Have a great time. Tell them I'm there with them in spirit.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I love you. I love all your kids. Are they all in there? Hi, guys. You have your headphones on. They can't hear me, huh? Oh, I love those kids. I tell you, seriously, we need to have a homeschool conference just with the kids. And I can just read them stories. That's my favorite thing in the whole world to do. I was volunteer at the library. I was a storytime lady for a while because they were doing such a horrible job. Such a pathetic job. They had like 3 kids come into story time. So I took over. I took over story time and we had so much fun. It was a blast. So yeah, I want to do like an online story time. So if any of your kids want that, like for part of your homeschool, I would do that. I would love to do that. That'd be super fun. Just introducing stories to them. So anyway, all right, mamas, lay out that feast. Lay out that feast for your babies, big and small, and give them a taste of those things that are beautiful and wonderful that will feed their heart.
Sounds good. So a quick question then, is this the email address that you advertise these meetups? Are we going to keep doing them weekly? Should I invite some more friends?
I can. I've offered to do that. If there are mamas that, this doesn't mess up their schedule too much, if there's a desire, I will do it because I'm the one I'm not teaching anybody right now. So I'm free to do it. Okay. So I just don't want to come on here and have, nobody, crickets. I'll be like, so if you want to, absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
Okay. So I'll just put it out there because I have a Facebook group in Florida that is LDS and friends. No, it's Latter-day Saints and friends, but it's really just the culture of homeschoolers that are part of our church because we were ousted in some of the other groups. So we said, okay, well, we're going to set up our network, and so I just thought I'd put it out there and see if they want to join something like that.
So like I said, I sent out a little email. I would love to get feedback from any of you who are getting it to tell me, okay, that's just you stop, you know, or do something else, or, you know, what we really need is this. But anyway, so, but I'll still do that too. Just send out a weekly email, and then I'll send out the notice of, you know, and this Zoom meeting is the same exact link every single time. I just have it set up like that. But, and I forget to remind anybody until like the night before at 1, you know, 12 o'clock or something, or that morning. So sorry about that, everybody. But Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, same link every time.
Great. We'll have people on both sides of the coast.
Well, that'll be fun. Yeah.
Right now, this is my only social outlet. I am like, you know, so done being alone. We're, you know, we're meant to be together. We're meant to be uplifting and supporting each other. And yeah, we're not getting it right now. So I'm like, this is my lifeline.
Yeah, I think that's why mamas stay on as long as they do. I think in normal life, we wouldn't have that much time, but.
Yeah, but this is great. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. Also, for any of you that are interested, if you find Kate DW on Facebook, she and a friend of hers did a Facebook Live on homeschooling, and I did watch it. Not all of it, because I, you know, but oh my goodness, you did such a good job. I'm so impressed. And like you said, there's that little issue of timing because the two of you were in 2 different places, you know, but I thought you did a really good job, and you always look so lovely. You just have a really nice on-screen presence. So.
Oh, you're so kind, because that's not what I feel when I look at it. I'm like, oh, you know.
Oh, no.
I think it's a powerful message of what we have to share. And when my friend asked if I would do that with her, it was just, I felt inspired in so many, and I had talked to you the day before or 2 days before. So I had, and you know, a lot of things to say, and I felt inspired to just say it. And some people said, you know, it was especially great at the end. And I thought, what was at the end? And I realized that was where my friend, her computer battery died, and she dropped off. And I kept talking about stuff you were talking about 2 days before, about listening to the Spirit and following that, you know, your feeling, making sure your emotional tank is full so that you can share it with your children. And it just was awesome. And then they ended up, you know, really appreciating that. And I think because they're beginning homeschoolers, they're at that place where they are a sponge. They're just, help me. I don't know. I feel overwhelmed. I just need some inspiration. I need somebody to tell me it's going to be okay, Mom. You know, and so that's what they were connecting to. And I am so glad. She wants to do more. We'll see if that works. I don't feel very comfortable doing live stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I think, you know, sometimes the Lord puts things in your mouth that you can be surprised that you said.
Absolutely.
In public. Maybe it will come back to bite me someday, but at the same time, someone is grateful, and hopefully we can gather the right audience that needs to hear it and be encouraged and go forward and do lots of good in the world. That's what we're all here for, together, supporting each other in this. And it's so needed right now, so much.
Absolutely. So keep sharing with other moms, you that are out there, even if you think you don't know anything yet, you know, share with other moms. Help them, because we all need to, like I said, link arms and support each other. And if you feel like there was anything valuable here, you know, feel free to send them here. I will do my best to try to facilitate a good, positive discussion and share with you the things that I know to be true. So, okay, thanks, mamas. I hope you have a great, incredible week. Jen, you're giving notes, and I love that. Keep doing that. And please send them to my email. I'm going to copy and paste the comments and put them in an email to myself. I don't know how else to do that. And I'll have my son edit this, and then we'll put it up on the Facebook page. I may end up having to put that public. That makes me cringe. But just to not have to keep sending people the link. So it's Teach Our Own. It was just, I was trying to come up with something that people could remember. And so I'll have Michael help me with that. And so look for it. If you don't have the link to it right now and want it, just email me at that email, teachourOwn2020@gmail.com, or message somebody here that knows me, and we'll make sure you get that. Have a great day, everybody.